do you have confidence that it will be a free and fair election and that it will be peaceful?
Two separate questions.
Very much.
I'm confident it'll be free and fair. I don't know whether it will be peaceful. The things that Trump has said and the things that he said last time out when he didn't like the outcome of the election were very dangerous. If you notice, I noticed that the vice presidential Republican candidate did not say he'd accept the outcome of the election. They haven't even accepted the outcome of the last election. So I'm concerned about what they're going to do.
But I'm just wondering if these outside agitators will start up on election day. Let's say you win. I mean, let's remember, you've got 50,000 Chinese nationals in this country in the last couple of years. Yeah. You've got people on the terrorist watch list, 350 in the last couple of years. You've got, like you said, 13,000 murderers and 15,000 rapists. Right. What are you expecting? Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful election day.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in all fairness. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
All right, guys. So once again, we got to talk about another hoax from the mainstream liberal media. They're boohoo whining and crying about something that Trump said after they purposely take what Trump said out of context and try to spin it into something that is not. Okay. And as you guys saw at the beginning of this video, in full context, President Trump was asked about the potential for violence on Election Day because Joe Biden and Democrats have basically come out and said that, hey, well, we think that Election Day is going to be a violent day if Trump loses, right? Basically implying that Trump supporters are going to be violent. Now, the truth of the matter is that it is much more likely that if Kamala Harris loses, there will be violence. And you know this because liberal cities will be boarding up in preparation of Kamala Harris losing on Election Day. You also know this because the left-wing lunatics have a history of committing acts of violence on Election Day when they lose. Now, what you're not going to see leading up to Election Day are conservative towns, conservative neighborhoods boarding up in preparation for conservatives to riot over Trump losing, because conservatives aren't stupid enough to destroy their own towns and neighborhoods over an election, okay? So you're probably not going to see that happen. But again, if Trump wins, based off history, okay, I think there's a solid chance that you could get some fireworks from the left, okay? Because this is what they tend to do when they lose. And Trump rightfully suggested that, hey, we should use the military, the National Guard, against violent rioters, the lunatics. That's exactly what he meant in full context. They all know that's what he meant. But instead of addressing the problem of left-wing violence every time they lose an election, no. They take his words out of context and they try to pretend like Trump is saying something that he's not really saying. And they're using this as propaganda for Kamala Harris because, as always, the Democrats and the mainstream liberal media, they're in lockstep with the narrative and the propaganda to smear Trump. Take a look.
Stage just a few moments ago, the vice president just used the former president's words against him after he suggested using the U.S. military on Election Day to go after what he called bad, sick, and radical left lunatics. In other words, his political opponents.
He's talking about the enemy within Pennsylvania, that he considers anyone who doesn't support him or who will not bend to his will an enemy of our country. He is saying that he would use the military to go after them. We know who he would target, and we know who he would target because he has attacked them before. Journalists whose stories he doesn't like. Election officials who refuse to cheat by filling extra votes and finding extra votes for him. Judges who insist on following the law instead of bending to his will. This is among the reasons I believe so strongly that a second Trump term would be a huge risk for America and dangerous. Donald Trump is increasingly unstable and unhinged.
Yeah, so you see, now you heard that. Okay, now, in full context, Trump clearly was talking about using the military and the National Guard to take care of violent left-wing extremists on Election Day who are committing acts of violence, which we know they have a history of doing so on Election Day. And he was not talking about using the military on his political enemies, okay? Now, here's the thing. On Election Day, Trump is not going to be in power. So this conversation really is irrelevant, right? It's very irrelevant because he's not going to be in power. So there's nothing that he can do on Election Day in regards to using the military. But that doesn't stop the mainstream liberal media from fear-mongering over this. And the hilarious part about the fear-mongering from the mainstream liberal media is that you have Democrat strategists complaining about the media not covering Trump enough, not being Trump deranged enough, as they're currently being Trump deranged over comments that Trump made where they took it out of context, and now they're covering it 24/7 as they always do, which shows you how out of touch with reality Democrats are and how desperate they are to take the attention off of Kamala Harris. And in this segment right here, this Democrat strategist is basically going to argue that Kamala Harris is losing because the media isn't covering Trump enough, okay? And conservative CNN contributor Shermichael Singleton is going to check her on this claim that clearly is out of touch with reality, that somehow, some way, the media is at fault if Kamala Harris loses because they're not Trump deranged enough. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Julie, take this seriously. Yeah, I know, but when he is airing his authoritarian impulses, is what he is saying. He's just putting it out there, and he's basically letting the voters know that, you know, this is what you're voting for. And I guess my question is why has the vice president not done enough to call it out, to go after it? Do the Democrats need to do more in calling it out?
I'm going to be honest with you, Jim. I think the media has not done enough to call this out. I mean, where are the front page New York Times stories and other newspapers over and over again? They ran stories about how Joe Biden was too old. He had to get out. Over and over and over again, it saturated the mass media market to the extent that everybody knew that Joe Biden was really, really old. But here you have a fascist and General Miller.
Wait, hold on. We can't just allow her to say that and let that slide. This woman is clearly out of touch with reality, right? Imagine going on national television and saying, well, the media, they covered Biden too negatively. The media, they were talking about how Biden's too old 24/7, when that just certainly was not the case. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, like they went out of their way to defend Joe Biden against accusations that he's too old, right? And his obvious mental decline, right? They were covering up for Joe Biden. They were telling people who accused Joe Biden of mentally declining of creating cheap fakes, right? Although Joe Biden was malfunctioning in front of the country, they covered for Joe Biden. Joe Biden would have been pushed out of the race a long time ago had it not been for the debate on CNN where the world saw the shape that Joe Biden was in. He was so bad that CNN, the propaganda outlets, could not run cover for him anymore, right? And that's why he was forced out, okay? The only reason Biden stayed in the race as long as he did is because the media was covering for him. They were not covering his mental decline enough. But in her world, in this woman's world, oh, no. The media, all they were talking about is Joe Biden's declining mental health and his age and, you know, yada, 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 right? Again, this is just delusion.
Is right, because all the markers of a fascist exist in Donald Trump. And yet our news media has not done enough by any stretch of the imagination to call this out. You know, Kamala Harris can call this out every day. But if it's not covered, if people keep asking on 60 Minutes, something like, why did the vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz, why did he say he was in Tiananmen Square or anywhere in Hong Kong during Tiananmen Square? Over and over again, as opposed to actually asking questions that matter to the voters. And this is something that really matters to the voters. I got to put the onus on the media as well.
How much does this woman get paid, bro? I want to know. How much does it cost to buy this woman's soul? Right? I'm just keeping it 100 because her soul has been bought, okay? You have to sell your soul to go on national television and to gaslight like this, right? I mean, just imagine you're making the argument, well, the media doesn't cover Trump enough. It's the media's fault that Kamala Harris is losing. That's essentially the argument that she's making. When the media right now is covering these comments from Trump out of context and making it out to be something that is not, right? The media is literally doing exactly what she's accusing the media of not doing enough of right now. The liberal media has covered Trump 24/7 for 8 years straight. And these people have the cojones to go on national television and to say with a straight face that the media isn't covering Trump negatively enough. Wow. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Shermichael,
we've covered this a lot. I can pull up right now on my smartphone, Google Donald Trump and some of his rhetoric, and you'll see it there. Vice President Harris has talked about it. Joe Biden attempted to run his campaign when he was running, and it didn't move the needle. And it didn't move the needle because the average American person, I would argue, based on focus group data, based on polls, they're looking at the economy, they're looking at immigration, and they're saying, Jim, that
I would say we do cover it. I mean,
no, we do cover it. They would say,
I mean, we do cover it. Yeah,
there are more important things that they're worried about. They know who Donald Trump is, and a lot of people are saying, you know what? I would rather deal with someone who I know, who I believe is more competent on the issues that are most important. Some people may not like that, but to say that we haven't covered it, I wouldn't agree with that. We have covered it. I just think there are far more consequential issues that impact people day-to-day lives, and that's what they're voting on.
Take a look at the ratio with all. Take a look at the ratio. You haven't cut. I'm not talking about your show, Jim. Actually, you've been doing a very good job on this. But I would say the media at large, the ratio just does not exist.
I think we could do a segment, what if Biden said it? You know, WIBSI, you know, what if Biden said it? You know, if Biden were out there saying the enemy within.
But Jim, I
mean, when you say Shermichael, there would be howls coming
but Jim,
from.
I just think in many ways we're scapegoating here, right? And so I feel like if the vice president doesn't win in November, then Democrats will say, oh, well, the media didn't cover it. They allowed Donald Trump. That's nonsense. We have covered this. People are just more concerned about other issues. And I don't buy into that. And I think it's very dangerous to blame the media. And look, there's a lot we can criticize the media on, but I think a lot of great reporters out there are doing a darn good job to cover this election as fairly as they possibly can. Right. And so if Dems don't win this thing, you can't just blame it on the media for saying that our candidate and our side didn't do enough.
All right, we'll talk about this. Shermichael, Julie, great conversation. And Julie, great point. I think we should talk about this further.
Yeah, I mean, Jim, come on, brother. Come on, man. Your show is dedicated to 24/7 Trump derangement. Again, this woman should be ashamed of herself, right? She just got on national television and said with a straight face that the media doesn't cover Trump enough. But see, what they're doing here, right? I'm going to tell you what's happening. What's happening is that the media, the Democrat strategists, they're upset that Kamala Harris's interviews are backfiring, right? In the sense that Kamala Harris is having to do this media tour and all of the stupid things that she's saying are so dumb, right? that the media has to cover it, right? The media is talking about her collapse. So they don't want that. Democrats just want the media to focus on Trump. In their ideal world, the media never talks about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Like you just said, well, why is 60 Minutes asking Tim Walz about him lying about his life, right? Because, I don't know, maybe it's important to talk about Democrats lying the same way that the media talks about Trump lying all the time, right? Even though Trump is not lying, they just say that he's lying, even though he's not lying, right? They just claim that he's lying. But again, if you're concerned about lies, shouldn't you be concerned about the lies on both sides? Apparently not, according to the Democrat strategists. But again, this idea that the media is not covering Trump negatively enough is just delusion. Like, it's just not based in reality at all. I mean, you have at least two networks. I mean, CNN and MSNBC, they're dedicated to 24/7 Trump derangement. Okay? ABC, dedicated to 24/7 Trump derangement. All of these networks are. And again, this is coming from a place in which I'm taking my bias out of it, right? I'm taking my bias out of it. Everybody can see that the media is overwhelmingly liberal. They're overwhelmingly Trump deranged. The only place that's not overwhelmingly Trump deranged is Fox News, and they don't run defense for him in the same way that MSNBC runs defense for Kamala Harris, okay? On Fox News, you will get some criticism of Trump, right? They will press Republicans on some things. But on MSNBC, it's nothing but Democrat ass kissing, right? I mean, they basically are a Democrat Party outlet at this point. Straight up. Straight up. So, again, this lady is delusional, but what's happening here is that you're going to see them start to blame the media, right? They're going to say, well, it's the media's fault if Trump wins, right? They're going to say, well, you guys weren't deranged enough. The problem is that the media's constant Trump derangement has made people numb to these things, okay? They always constantly take the things that Trump says out of context, and people start to pick up on the pattern here, right? When you spam the Trump derangement card too much, which they have spammed it for the last 8 years, when you spam it enough, eventually people become numb to it, man. And they're just like, oh, okay, they're complaining about something Trump said again. You go and you look at what Trump said and you're like, oh, well, he didn't really say what they're saying that he said. And that's why this doesn't work anymore, right? This is why Trump is more popular than he's ever been. But again, the crazy part is that these Democrat strategists, these people who probably get paid millions of dollars to tell Democrats how to lose, they don't realize what's happening. They don't understand that, no, it's not that the media isn't covering Trump enough, it's that they're covering him too much, right? When you say that everything that he says is bad and you take everything he says out of context to make it something that is not, eventually you're going to program people to just tune it out, right? To automatically not believe anything that the mainstream liberal media says about Trump. And that's what's happening. That is what has happened. That's why the attacks don't work anymore, right? This is why Trump has become Teflon. This is why you can't stop the man. Because you've attacked him for 8 years straight, nonstop, 24/7. And it's gotten to the point now where it's like, okay, well, it's just completely ineffective, right? That's just what it is. So, if they want to continue to do this, fine. Like I told you guys, all they got leading up to this election is more Trump derangement and shaming voters for not supporting Kamala Harris. And if this is all they got, okay, they might as well pack it up right now. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.